because they are not a government. They are the United States Corporation. The U.S. government incorporated as a for-profit commercial enterprise in the Legislative Act of February 21st, 1871, 41st Congress, Session 3, Chapter 62, page 419, and chartered a federal company entitled United States, i.e. United States, aka U.S. Incorporated, a commercial agency originally designated as Washington, D.C., in accordance with the so-called 14th Amendment, which the records indicate was never ratified. The United States government is a foreign corporation with respect to the state. 19 Corpus Juris Secundum 541, location of United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. Secretary of the Treasury of Puerto Rico was appointed receiver over the bankrupt United States in the Reorganization Plan number 26 in 1950, Title 5, United States Code, Section 903, Public Law 94-564. The Secretary of the Treasury of Puerto Rico, Title 27, Code of Federal Regulations, Section 251.11, the title, Secretary of the Treasury, is a euphemistic abbreviation of the actual title, Secretary of the Treasury of Puerto Rico. The Internal Revenue Service was incorporated in Delaware, is not a part of the supposed U.S. government, which is but a de facto for-profit corporation masquerading as a government. It operates out of Puerto Rico. This is the IRS. It's not registered to do business in any state, is the bookkeeping and debt collection arm of the Secretary of the Treasury of Puerto Rico. They collect for the International Monetary Fund. Everybody who gets up into the administration, the Congress, the legislation, all the way down to the local level are corporations, private companies. We are their chattel. We are their inventory. They make money off of us, and you don't even know how deep it goes. In 1871, when the United States became incorporated, they attached our birth certificates to a CUSIP number on the stock exchange, which equals slave trade, and it's done every time a baby is born. There is a bond trust account set up, and they trade us on the stock market, and this is all documented, and I know it, and insist the corporation must be dissolved, the Federal Reserve must be banned from this country, and we must turn our system of judiciary back to a common law. If there's no harm, no loss, there's no crime. And everything else is a way to get you to pay. Even the court systems are hooked up to the CUSIP system. When you get a case number on a court document and you're being charged with something, why do you think they call it a bill or being charged? Because that's exactly what's happening. They set that court number up, and it's attached to the stock exchange too. And from the moment you're arrested or charged, they start trading you on the stock market, swapping you just like they were with the derivatives and the default swaps on the mortgage. And that's a whole nother thing. We all know that's coming out in the mainstream media.
following video details the contents of the Department of Defense document entitled Internment and Resettlement Operations, also known as FM 3-39.40. The document is 325 pages long and it is signed by Joyce E. Morrow, Administrative Assistant to the Secretary of the Army. It was created in 2010, however, has just been recently leaked to the public via the internet and can now be downloaded from multiple sources. In the description below, you'll find a download link for the document. I strongly encourage you to download it yourself and to verify everything that's being said here. The document outlines military procedures for internment and resettlement of civilians, and it describes the layout and the administration of these internment camps. It clearly states on page 38 that it applies within U.S. territory, and it specifically addresses the detainment of U.S. citizens, as is indicated by the identification procedures for new prisoners on page 146, which states that social security numbers are to be recorded alongside their photograph and fingerprints. Included in the list of organizations which may be involved in these internment operations are the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, the Department of Defense, and the United Nations. On page 56, the document outlines the responsibilities of psychological operations officers within the camps, among which it states that a PSYOP officer develops and executes indoctrination programs to reduce or remove antagonistic attitudes and identifies political activists. On page 281, the document goes into more detail regarding the role of psychological operations within the camps, specifically in regards to pacifying the population and ensuring cooperation. On page 238, it gives the conditions for the use of deadly force in such camps. Among the justifications for lethal force, it includes to terminate an active escape attempt. That point right there should make it clear that these camps are not benevolent disaster relief type facilities. On page 244, the document calls for the use of snipers during riots to, quote, scan a crowd and identify agitators and riot leaders for apprehension and fire lethal rounds if warranted. On page 260, it shows the basic layout for a facility focusing on detainment. It is depicted with interrogation areas, tribunal areas, and mortuaries. Each detainment facility is designed to hold 4,000 prisoners, and they are depicted with multiple levels of barbed wire separating compartments within the facilities, with a double barbed wire fence enclosing them, and watched over by 24 guard towers. On page 261, the document depicts the layout for what they call civilian resettlement facilities, which are designed to house 8,000 people. Though it uses the word resettlement, the plans show multiple levels of barbed wire dividing the sections of the facility, with double barbed wire fencing on the outside, as well as 16 guard towers. On page 262, the layout for facilities designed for what they call non-compliant prisoners is shown. These camps are designed to hold up to 300 prisoners, they have 3 interrogation centers, and are guarded by 13 guard towers. Now, if there's any question whether these plans are active or just theoretical, this should be settled by the fact that the U.S. Army has been running ads for job positions in these camps since 2009, and apparently, they're still hiring. Once again, if you look in the description, you'll find all the links you need to verify this information. It's important to note here that this document was created in 2010, which was under the Obama administration, and it predates the NDAA of 2012, which authorized military detainment of U.S. citizens. This clearly shows a long-term agenda at work.
Yeah. Goes all the way to Washington, D.C., huh? Goes all the way to Washington, D.C.
I don't know.
Yeah, you Homeland Security?
No.
Yeah. How far have you taken this down to, how far have you actually ran a load? 100 miles? Up to Maine? No shit. How many miles do you think that is? Man, that's unbelievable. Not to mention, I heard there's one that goes all the way to Colorado, right? Unbelievable. What do you think you're hauling? Any idea?
Crap.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Crap makes all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
You don't really know.
Yeah. I know there's been a lot of military stuff being hauled around lately, that's for sure, huh?
Yeah, we deliver to military.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. 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 Well, I appreciate I heard that's water supply, food supply, everything's in there. Yeah, unbelievable.
But you don't get no cell phone for service.
No. Peace, brother. I mean, basically, you got an underground roadway system here that runs all the way to Maine, to Washington, D.C., to Colorado. It's fully stocked. It runs completely underground. And you can see they've been hauling tons of military equipment. You know, they're stocking all these bases. Now, the other thing is the railroad system here is also very strategic. They're bringing in boxcar loads and they're dump shipping here, and they can really deliver to all these locations, which these locations go all the way to Area 51. These locations go all the way to Washington, D.C. There's access underneath the White House to this location, okay? So this is a strategic location, which is really the new command center for the Illuminati and the United States government. Well, forget the United States government. This is a headquarters for the Illuminati. This is where they'll ship most of their supplies. When they go underground, they can stay underground for quite some time. And this is stocked with food, water, everything they need. It's an underground city. So this is the north entrance, and we're going to go see if we can do some more digging.
And most don't want to look at it, then I do not blame you. I do not blame the survivors of this abuse who stay dissociated, who remain used and enslaved because they cannot look either, because they cannot come to terms with their experiences. And I do not blame the general public who will not look. But this is reality. And all I ask of those who watch this is that you remember that while it may be excruciatingly painful for you to look at this reality, to think about this being possible, there are children. I ask you to remember and acknowledge that there are children who are surviving it every day. There are children enduring this, dying in this, and surviving this, who have to carry that pain all alone. And if they can do that, maybe you can muster the strength, if you have it, to look.
you now to pronounce judgment on those accused.
dream slash vision, whatever. I dreamed that I was standing in a field, and it was nighttime, and I was looking at the expanse of the sky. I mean, I might have been in big sky country or something. I mean, there's no mountains, there were no buildings in front of me, just the horizon, the beauty of the heavens. It was breathtaking. Behind me, I could hear the sounds of life. I could hear horns honking, people talking, conversations. I couldn't make out specific words, but like multitudes of people talking, cheering, maybe watching a ball game. Heard babies crying, not in terror or anything, just baby talk and crying and people talking. It was the sounds of life. I never turned around. I don't know if I was prohibited from doing that. I had no inkling to do it. I was looking at the expanse of the sky. Beautiful, beautiful night. Hearing all of the sounds behind me of life. Not a care in the world. As I was watching the stars and constellations, and I can remember in my dream identifying a couple of the constellations that I know and literally seeing them. And then the next thing I know is that the stars begin to take on colors. And I see these colors in my dream, and I can remember thinking, not only is this beautiful, but this is very unusual. I don't know that I've ever seen this phenomenon before. And then I would see things streaking across the sky, maybe like a comet or something, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen with colors involved in it. And then some of the constellations began to kind of almost swirl, not like a fan, but I mean just kind of started moving like that. And then they started shifting positions a little bit. Then I can remember thinking, okay, something supernatural is going on. Now all this is happening in my mind as I'm watching. I'm still hearing the sounds of life. Then I hear the sounds of life behind me getting a little more panicked. It's like they're seeing it too, and they don't know what to make of it. I can remember that I didn't have a feeling of terror. I had a feeling of awe and wonder and thinking something is happening in the heavens. There's a shifting, there's a shattering, there's something is going on, supernatural. And then the stars appeared, literally, to fall from the sky. Not just fall, but to be zooming towards the earth. At the same time that it looked like, well, now I know the scriptures that talk about the heavens being rolled up like a scroll. It looked like almost like a dimensional shift that was taking place. And then the streaking coming down, and then the sounds of life behind me. Holy terror. People were shrieking, screaming. You could hear people, oh my God, and they, and then sirens were going off and warning sounds, and it was like something cataclysmic was happening. I'm still watching it. It was happening so quickly, and I remember thinking, well, I don't have any fear in me. The next thing I know, there's a presence beside me. I'm not allowed to look, or I didn't look, but I was aware that I was in the midst, the arms of a presence, or in the midst of a presence, a personal presence. And the next thing I know, I'm just being lifted up. And I'm not talking about some kind of cheesy movie of the rapture or anything. It's just, it was real. It was smooth. It was peaceful. I look over to my left, and now the whole time I hadn't looked left or right, but now I look my left, my wife is right there. And she's such a woman of God. And she knew the Lord long before I did. And she's looking at me, she's smiling. And we just had this knowing look. We didn't even communicate, but we knew what was happening. And we get whisked up, and the next thing I know, it's like watching a Star Wars movie and warp speed. Everything just went, just into a streak and then to a flash of light, and boom, it's like we bursted through another dimension, if you will, a barrier of some sort. No fear ever. And I'm still aware of this presence, that we were under the control of a benevolent presence. And the next thing I saw was we busted through, I'm just going to call it a dimensional shift. We busted through another dimension, and before me was the most beautiful. It had to be what the earth looked like when it was first formed by the hand of God. The colors were so vibrant. The smells, the air smelled like potpourri. I can still smell it sometimes. I saw what looked like villages, beautiful, beautiful little homes, and flowers everywhere. You could hear children off in the distance just laughing, having a blast. People, the peace was overwhelming. The sun was just magnificent. And I can remember asking the presence, is this heaven? Is this paradise? And then I heard the voice, and it just said, this is where you will live forever. Welcome home.